Thank you, Ryan, and let me offer my own welcome to all of you this evening. I also want to go on record publicly to let you know that several times this year I told Shirley and Kathy that I did not accept their resignations. And now you know about the scope of presidential power. So given the fact that they are actually going to retire, I can't think of anyone more appropriate to serve as the inaugural speaker at our first LaTour Eichenwald Forum than Linda Kloss. Many of you know about Linda's career and her achievements in the profession, but let me mention some of the highlights. Linda served as CEO of the American Health Information Management Association from 1995 to 2010, leading a period of growth and expanded influence for the professional society of 60,000 health information management professionals worldwide. She was recognized for expanding the influence of AHIMA through extensive collaboration and a strong role in setting standards and shaping national policy for health information reform. In 2007, Modern Healthcare named her as one of the top 25 women in healthcare, and from 2002 to 2007, she was regularly named to the list of the top 100 people in healthcare. Today, as principal for Kloss Strategic Advisors, Linda speaks and writes on information asset management, strategy and organizational development, and change leadership. She works with boards and senior teams of healthcare associations on strategy, planning, and information governance. Last year, Linda was appointed to a 4-year term on the National Committee on Vital and Health Statistics, which advises the Secretary of Health and Human Services on national health information policy. She co-chairs the committee's Privacy, Confidentiality, and Security Subcommittee. Linda has accomplished all of this while remaining quite a loyal supporter of the College of St. Scholastica. She's a proud member of the class of 1968 and served as a member of the Board of Trustees from 2001 to 2009. She's a member of the HIM Graduate Programs Advisory Committee, and recently she served on the Science Initiative Leadership Committee, which has just concluded a very successful volunteer fundraising effort for our Science Center expansion. The college has awarded Linda an honorary doctoral degree in recognition of her leadership and extraordinary contributions to her profession and to the college. She also holds a master's degree in organization development with a concentration in nonprofit change leadership and has earned fellowship status from AHIMA. Please join me in welcoming Linda Kloss.
Well, good evening. It's very special to be here. Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. I think I add my sense of how honored we all are to be here to recognize Kathy LaTour and Shirley Eichenwald-Maki, and to be part of this first annual LaTour Eichenwald Forum on HIM Leadership and Innovation. What a joy it is to be together on this occasion, to remember, to reflect, and to look forward in the company of great friends, colleagues, and loved ones, and especially to the students that I had the honor to have the opportunity to meet this afternoon. A special acknowledgement to all of you. And isn't it fitting that this occasion coincides with the centennial celebration of the college? Larry didn't mention that. But it's remarkable, as I was reflecting on this, to realize that Kathy, Shirley, and I have been associated with the college and with health information management for nearly half of those 100 years. And that is a bit sobering. So when we reflect, we do it with knowledge, firsthand knowledge. It really is very hard to imagine the HIM community without Kathy and Shirley at its center. They have shaped and epitomized the values of the community for so long. They have taught us, they've supported us, inspired us to do better, and to be our best. And I know that everybody here has a story. Everybody here or everybody participating on the internet certainly has a story to tell about some time that Kathy or Shirley gently coached them to better understand an issue or a course of action, when their calm listening skills helped us see things more clearly, or when they brought people together in their special way to learn from one another. So it's very fitting that they're doing that once again for all of us. They have been there for all of us whenever we've needed their support and encouragement. They've been there with an open mind and an open heart, and for that we thank them with all our hearts. This forum for HIM leadership and innovation, I think, has the potential to be one more lasting contribution of Kathy and Shirley. And I'm excited about its potential to continue the contributions of its namesakes for many years to come. Health informatics and information management, as I reflect on it, really needs this forum at this time. The field is in the early stage of a very transformative era, and one for which there are very few roadmaps or guideposts. Vision and leadership and an engaged learning community will determine, I believe, whether the HIM field is elevated in importance or marginalized in the years ahead. And I don't believe it's an exaggeration to suggest that this is a make it or break it time for the field and our discipline. But the field has been transformed before, through, at least in part, because of the leadership of this college. And the importance of what we're kicking off and discussing tonight is, as I lay out, the challenge for what I think the next era is about. And as I reflected, I really realized that this field has transformed itself at least 2 times before. And I'd like to outline what those transformations have been about and how the college has guided and supported and really led each of them. The first era I'm going to call the archive era of this field. And the second era, a records management era. And the new era, I struggled some with the phrase, but I chose information science as the era because I believe that strong science is what's needed going forward. And I define this evolution in terms of the record and the information, rather than perhaps what's happened in terms of how the field has progressed, because, as I hope you'll see more clearly, focusing on the essential work of the field helps us to clarify what the challenges ahead are really all about. The College of St. Scholastica has played an amazingly important leadership role in eras 1 and 2, and we're counting on it. We are counting on it. Those of us who have been around half a century, we're counting on it to lead the next era. So let's talk about the historical. Let's reflect a little bit. The archival era in the field of health information management really began in Boston. Many of us know this history well, when 5 record clerks from Boston hospitals met at Massachusetts General at a first club of record clerks. And interestingly, that meeting was held in 1912, exactly 100 years ago, and the same year as the College of St. Scholastica was founded. You see, it was fate. And this meeting was held 1 year before the American College of Surgeons was founded, with a mission to improve quality of patient care and raise standards for surgeons. A marvelous story that I always have gone back to in this field was that we started as a profession because a survey of hospitals performing surgery failed miserably because there were no records to permit evaluation and improvement. And so one of the founding standards for the American College of Surgeons was addressing the efficient making and handling of records. And the college was right there. St. Mary's Hospital opened its medical record department in 1919 with Sister Patricia Thibodeau at its helm. In 1928, the College of Surgeons invited the leaders in this now Committee of Record Librarians to attend a College of Surgeons meeting in Boston, where the Association for the field was founded. I don't know if Sister Patricia attended that meeting in person. It wasn't in the history guide that Shirley and Kathy wrote. But we do know that she was one of the first members of that new national association, and in fact, she was member number 12. So it's quite likely she got herself on a train and went to Boston and was there at the founding. Now, the main objective of that new association was to elevate the standards for clinical records, serve as a means of intercommunication among record librarians, and encourage the training of record librarians. And when the new National Association first proposed establishment of schools for medical record librarians, Sister Patricia was right there with a proposal to her superiors to establish a program at St. Mary's in conjunction with the college. The leadership stretch here was the thinking at the time of the association was that these would be hospital-based training programs, but Mother Agnes Summers suggested instead a degree program at the college, and the rest is history. This program at the College of St. Scholastica was the first baccalaureate degree program for this fledgling health profession in 1935, and provided the vision that this was a field that needed academic foundations. I love that picture. This is 1938. I wasn't there yet. During these formative decades, the case or medical record was becoming more important, and in the words of Dr. Malcolm McEachran, more essential to the hospital plan. He was a legendary figure in healthcare management and led the College of Surgeons Quality Improvement Program and encouraged this field. He advised the medical record librarians at the time to secure all the material necessary for the efficient organization of the clinical record and operation of the hospital. But in this era, the record was primarily a historical document. The medical record department functioned to prepare the record for archive and retrieval. The domain was primarily concerned with management of records that were no longer in everyday use, but still needed to be kept, semi-current or inactive records, often stored in basements, and we know some of those metaphors. The record, though, needed to be complete, accurate, legible, organized for retrieval, because it supported critical functions of research, statistics, the evaluative activity of the College of Surgeons, And it served to jog the memories of those who were responsible for subsequent care and treatment of patients. But think that these were much simpler times, and healthcare was still largely a cottage industry until after World War II. Over the first 4 decades then, the 20s to the 50s, the medical record profession progressed from clerical to managerial level, and I believe that the Baccalaureate Foundation, spearheaded by the college, was absolutely critical for this progression. The academic foundation enabled record librarians to assume department head positions as hospitals grew in complexity and organizational structure. And importantly, the academic foundation also required that a body of knowledge for the profession be compiled and be standardized. In the 1950s, the field again focused on its academic foundation, and at this time, most practitioners were still being trained in hospital-based programs. The college and a handful of others, academic programs, were the exceptions. But research were done. The recommendation came forward that the field transitioned to college and university-sponsored education based on a standard curriculum. And while it took 20 years, 2 decades, for the leadership of the college, the rest of the field did follow this leadership, and hospital programs were phased out. Academic programs based on core curriculum and operating standards became the norm. St. Scholastica remained a role model with a national reputation through all these decades. And an anecdote will make this point. When I graduated with the class of '68, yes, this is us now. Wait, all right, now there's Kathy. Kathy LaTour. We not only went to college together, but we did go to middle school and high school also. So we go back. But when I graduated, the first position I took after graduation in 1968 was at the Children's Hospital and Adult Medical Center of San Francisco. And I went into a position of assistant director of the medical record department, which was exactly the position the college trained us to take: assistant director, work, move up. My boss at the time, the director, Mrs. Marilyn Gunther, was very well recognized in the field, particularly in California, and for years she had run one of the hospital-based programs. And she was a force to be reckoned with. But when I interviewed with her, she said, "I have always wanted to hire a St. Scholastica graduate." She interviewed no one else, and I got this job on the spot. Very strong brand. And I believe that strong brand continues to this day. So, you know, when Kathy and Shirley and I started in this field, we were sort of in the transition from an archival era to a records management era. And I think our contemporaries have moved that forward. And this second area, records management, I think began in the 1960s and has continued really until, to some extent, today. And in fact, some of you are still working in this era, and some have moved on to the next era, and we're at this awkward transition point, flex point, where medical records are becoming digital, but the transition isn't complete. It's certainly well on its way, but it's not complete. And I think we're at the tail end of 2 and early days of 3, and that transition point is a time of great opportunity. But as you know in change management, it's also a time of some peril. The work of medical record professionals was management of records over their lifetime, from the point of creation through their eventual disposal and disposition. And that's how we viewed this. The era was marked, I believe, by 2 very transformative pieces of legislation. The first, obviously, was the passage of the Social Security Act in 1965 that established Medicare and Medicaid, and that profoundly impacted how we kept records. New forms of measurement and accountability that drove documentation standards, and all of you who have experience in the field over these decades know that really virtually from 1960 to present, we've seen program after program being launched to control spending, demonstrate value, improve quality and safety, all of which have relied on the record that substantiated the care delivered. So the record moved from ERA to a very active document on which all of these programs relied, and we know that private payers, Blue Cross and other private payers, certainly followed the federal lead. The second major legislative impact in this records management era certainly was the 1983 law establishing prospective pricing for hospital services, using diagnosis-related groups, using data from the medical record to establish what the payment was going to be. And while this program was just the latest in a whole series of attempts to control costs, DRGs were headlined at the time as moving medical records from the basement to the boardroom. Well, we didn't quite make it there. But a hyperbole, certainly. It was, I think, the headline in Modern Healthcare, if I recall. But the spotlight was on documentation and coding like never before, and it still is. These two laws and many, many other regulatory changes and voluntary changes since the 1960s have reflected the growing challenges of the ever-challenging cost and complexity of our healthcare system, both its delivery and its financing. And it all rests on the need for information. We saw during this period that the growing reliance on medical record documentation for patient care and payment characterized records management. And over the decade, even though that shifted from paper to other media, the record has remained the definitive compilation of evidence concerning activities associated with care. The college stepped forward again with real leadership in the late 60s when it introduced a course on electronic data processing. And that was very early. At that time, we barely had punch cards helping get hospital bills out. But this program was teaching electronic data processing in medical record science curriculum, well ahead of the curve. Clear even 40-plus years ago that paper could not support the needs of a complex health system. And while the vision was clear to Sister Kathleen Hofer, then chair of the Medical Record Science program, the technology was really not ready for broad support of that vision until the 21st century. So I think this program stood behind a vision of transition to digital. It just took time to get the tools to be available. And in fact, it's been really the last decade, even the last 5 years, that we've seen rapid acceleration. But I think the college graduates were ready to help lead and move that change. And I recall being at meetings with Kathy and Shirley in the early 1970s, sponsored by a company that was going to do a patient-centered medical record. This was 1973, and we believed it was around the corner. As the volume of work increased in medical records departments, there was a need for skilled technical workers, and 2-year educational programs were established at community colleges. In 1981, the college took its first group of progression students, enabling associate degree health information management technicians to earn a baccalaureate degree. And in fact, the 70s, 80s, and 90s were a period of protracted debate about the role of technical workers and what the professional entry level should be. So while the college supported academic career path through progression, it also took the decisive leadership step to be among the first programs in the field to raise the bar, and in 1997, it launched the HIM Master's Program. Of course, now that I have the perfect benefit of 20/20 hindsight, it's clear that the field should have moved to masters at an entry level or as a trajectory, even in the 80s when the medical librarians did that. It's now on the roadmap, and it will happen, and it's targeted for 2016. And I have to tell you, I don't know that it would be on that roadmap if it weren't for the drive and the leadership of Kathy and Shirley in moving that issue forward over and over again. And I think had it been up to them, this important step might have come earlier. And the reason for the step is the growing complexity of the science, and we'll turn to that in just a moment. But the reality is professional associations, professions are also political systems. And that would have been just too big a step for a field that had consistently more job opportunities than it had qualified applicants. And there was a real workforce balance that played out over and over again. HIM leaders from CSS have collaborated on the advancement of curriculum for professional education, the standards for accreditation of academic programs, the certification and continuing education of HIM professionals. The thought leadership and sweat equity of program chairs in this program from at least the 1970s forward, the decades I have been witness to, is extraordinary and without parallel. Sister Kathleen, Pat Pierce, Kathy LaTour, Shirley Eichenwald-Maki led critical initiatives benefiting the whole field through their volunteer leadership roles with AHIMA. And that leadership has gone on for decades, not years, decades. So on behalf of all of us who have benefited from your patient and wise counsel, we thank you again. But now we look forward, and HIM is again transforming itself from archive to records management, and now finally, and probably not finally, there'll be something after this, to what I'll call an information science era. In his fascinating book, it's called The Information, A History, a Theory, a Flood, James Gleick states that the word information began to be used in a scientific context in the late 1940s. Amazing, huh? You'd have thought that was generations ago. While the word information was used, it wasn't used in a scientific way until Claude Shannon and some of the other folks at the Bell Labs invented the transistors. And they learned that it was possible to count bits of information. They created a unit of measure for information. And that allowed information to move from some nebulous communication issue to really a science. Began to be thought of as something that could be modeled, counted, transmitted, processed, concepts very familiar to us in today's information society, but quite foreign just 60 years ago. I really appreciate this quote as he captures the foundational value of information when he writes that really that information is what our world runs on. It's the blood and the fuel and the vital principle. Information we know now is the basis for all sciences. It's understood that information processing is the key function of the DNA. the basis for physics, and the structure of the universe. So it really should be said, can be said, that information is fundamental to life. And it certainly and assuredly is fundamental to every aspect of health and health care. So if information then is a science, when we think about the era that you students are taking us into, the management of that information must too become a science. And that means based on some information management scientific principles. This is a big change from archive or records management. Electronic health records today have been adopted by somewhere between 16 and 35% of physicians, depending on what statistics we look at. But we do know that that rapid adoption has really occurred from 2009 through 2011. And we also know that 85% of hospitals today now report that by 2015 they intend to take advantage of incentive payments made available through Medicare and Medicaid. And we need to get information in digital form before we can apply the sciences, because then we can count it and do all of the other scientific processing. So it's really been very important that the field has done as much as it has in supporting the transition from paper to electronic. And I don't believe that HIM has, as a field, been anything but an avid and active supporter in that transition, and has done it with some risk, because we knew all the old norms got kind of severely disrupted. So while healthcare has lagged other information-intensive industries in the adoption of IT, the pace of catch-up right now is just breathtaking. We had a discussion with the senior students, and they're all experiencing the breathtaking pace of change and the uncharted courses that they're dealing with day by day as they try to have the policy framework and the scientific framework for information management kind of catch up to the technology. And we will catch up. And it's okay to understand that we're just in this period of intense transition where we don't have the new set of rules and the old ones aren't working very well. So I always get disturbed when I read articles, sort of suggesting that, well, when we get to full adoption, we'll be done. And we all understand that when we get to full adoption, the reality is that that's the beginning. And right now, we're eager to kind of put the paper behind us and start figuring out this new world. And what we've learned so far is that adoption is not without consequences, and many of them unexpected and unintended. We talked today with the students about the issues of health information exchange, where there are lofty goals about exchanging information between two computer systems, but the information framework in those systems are completely different, and they weren't designed to talk to one another. We talked about the challenges of data quality, which is not a new concept by any means, but it was more controllable and manageable in a records management area than it is today, when an error gets promulgated through multiple systems and the cost of backtracking and correcting that error is not unconsequential. We've also talked about technology-induced safety issues. So we're at a point where we're almost ramping up. We're certainly beyond the tipping point of technology adoption, but the policy framework isn't there yet. And that is our challenge in the coming years as HIM. Interesting other consequence of this rapid adoption has been the acute shortage of qualified IT staff, particularly to support moving IT into small physician practices. Now, we know that the federal government has supported the training of IT certificate-prepared individuals through 82 community college programs and 9 universities nationwide. And as of January, there were more than 9,000 community college students that have been trained for health IT careers, and another 8,700 or so that are enrolled. I worry about this. I've worried about this since I had the opportunity to talk to the folks in the Office of the National Coordinator, and they explained that what they were doing in offering certificate programs was at the advice of the Department of Labor, that thought the model of the TSA was a perfect model for us in health IT. Yes, that was true. And I think, though, we have to look at this as a rapid flex, new people coming into the field, and one of the great opportunities of the college in the coming years is again to do what you did before and create academic career paths for those that see this as a career and understand that academic progression is absolutely essential. So the good news is that there are now 15,000 more people with a certificate in health IT supporting the work of EHR adoption in small physician practices, but what will they do next year or the year after? And I think the college has a real opportunity to provide leadership in this way. So what does the HIM look like in this information science era? I think we need to shape a new information management science, bringing forward the sustaining values and ethical practices that have characterized the field, but redeveloping and adding new processes, practices, technology, and know-how, new competencies. And in my view, this era will be framed by 3 essential health information management principles. A first principle will be, well, let's go back a little bit. In the records management era, I think one of the motivators for records management and effective records management was compliance. We were always faced with new regulatory requirements. And I think while compliance and regulations and standards will always be an important part of healthcare, in the information science era, the prime motivation shifts to information as an asset. That healthcare now has made $1 billion, multi-billions in investment in information and getting digital information. This is an asset for every organization, and it's the asset that's going to be leveraged to finally get control of quality, safety, and cost issues in healthcare. This is the special moment that we're in now. We have finally got the data and the tools to do the things we've been trying to do for decades. And so looking at it as an asset means we have to start managing it as an asset. Just like we do bricks and mortar, people, finances, intellectual property, healthcare organizations don't see their information as an asset yet. And we had a good discussion about this with the senior students this afternoon. But they're learning, and the sophisticated ones understand it very well. What hasn't yet happened, but what we need to drive, is that if it's an asset, then it's an asset that needs investment. And where we're at, I think, right now in this early day of this era is that we've invested in technology and assumed that that would bring the solution. And the next step and the next message that needs to go forth in this era from this collective community is that the focus and the investment needs to be on the information. It has great strategic value, must be managed to maximize its value while minimizing risk. Information assets of the healthcare organization include primary and secondary medical record data, business operations data, images, personal health records, performance review, and other content in physical and in digital form. Our field needs to broaden its view of information. It's not the medical record anymore. I told the story this afternoon that I'm working with a company that's merging the medical data with socioeconomic data. And that tells so much about what the quality needs are and what the community-based kinds of support systems are. We've had in the records management area, a compliance focus, and we've had an institutional focus. The new era is information as an asset, and it goes way beyond the healthcare community, and it includes me, the patient. I'm part of this new information era. Healthcare organizations, really are dramatically expanding the uses of information to improve care. They're providing that information to patients and the public. And all of these uses are fabulous. But guess what? The information science and the infrastructure for managing that information isn't fully developed yet. And I really see this as the wonderful challenge of this field and of this college going forward, taking a scientific approach to what the information management challenge must be about. And when information is viewed as an asset and managed more holistically, there's greater trust in that information, and there's greater willingness to make information-informed decisions, and we have to get to that point. Quality and cost of health care is choking our society. We know that. And here we are at this leverage point where information is almost there as a science, and now we just need to reap the rewards. Ensuring the value of information assets requires an organization-wide perspective. It requires explicit structures, policies, processes, technologies, and controls. In business, outside of healthcare, other information-intensive industries call this enterprise information management, or EIM. And in this new era, HIIM professionals should lead EIM. You should be the enterprise information management professionals or chief information management officers or whatever title. But information is the driver, not only the technology, and we need to educate. I think there's one more principle besides asset enterprise information management that needs to guide our thinking, and that is the concept of information governance. In healthcare, we have a very special obligation. We're dealing with information that belongs to patients, people. They have great concern about trust, and right now we're failing them miserably. If we just look at the number of breaches that continue to make the headlines week after week, it's sad. I understand that it's difficult and the science isn't there to do it, but that's a great example of where we need new science to do a better job at providing the kind of trust environment that's needed to really engage people in helping to be part of using information to change. I've had the great privilege of working with a group on the National Committee on Vital and Health Statistics where they're studying community initiatives that are almost perking up on their own by people who come together and say, we can help manage obesity in our community and reduce diabetes. And we can do that by tapping into all these new information sources. And you know, the opportunity in our country for transformative change through those kinds of information uses is awesome. It certainly is something that the college can do and lead in its own community. But people are afraid. They need a stewardship framework that's better than what we have today in terms of what the ground rules are for using information. So governance is this third key element for our information science era. It's about assigning rights and responsibilities, ensuring accountability. So it follows that information governance will lay out kind of the critical practices and obligations and make sure that they're being reasonably carried out. In health information management, we understand this, but there are very few healthcare organizations in this country that are even talking about information governance as a set of functions that are critical and that must begin with the board of directors and include everybody in that organization, and then go beyond the organization to include HIE and community. We've got lots of work to do in the area of governance and stewardship. Experts at the IT think tank Gardner Group describe enterprise information management as an essential organizational discipline. An essential organizational discipline, and information governance as the crucial building block of EIM. Just think about that for a moment. We've got to get to the point where our healthcare organizations understand they need enterprise information management, and in order to be effective at that, they need robust information governance. This is our task as HIM, I believe, over the next decades. The demand for high-quality data and improved governance to support patient care and critical healthcare initiatives is sharply increasing. Healthcare delivery and payment reform is leading to expanded awareness of the need to invest in, but the HIM field needs to be speaking with a much louder voice about these needs, and we need to be coming together and thinking about how best to provide a solution. Like our professional ancestors in Boston, the HIM field needs to come together again to elevate the standards for health information. Let me salute the very fine faculty of the HIM department. I know you are as invested in the continuing success of this program as those who served before you. But to you, I offer 4 challenges for going forward and to continue and extend the impact. And I've designed these to be kind of provocative. And that's good, right? First, I think you need to prepare graduates to manage information assets at an enterprise level. It's a different world. This is a focus for a master's level curriculum with a distinct mission that can be differentiated from general health informatics. This thinking has begun, and I've been happy to be part of discussions on this with the Graduate Program Advisory Committee, but the healthcare industry really needs this kind of thinking and leadership from the college, and it needs it quickly, and it needs it with plenty of noise. I've learned that, if any lesson, these kinds of changes don't come quietly. We need to be making noise, and you know, that's kind of one of the things I've been trying to do in thought leadership, just make some noise. And people will start to listen. I've found people to engage with that have gotten there. I shared this story this afternoon about the fact that the Alberta Health Services in Alberta, Canada, have now come around to identifying enterprise information management as a core province-wide function with health information management professionals at the helm that include all of the things we've talked about that frame governance: data quality, life cycle records management, privacy confidentiality, the information governance, the whole suite of functions that will frame our field going forward. So think about graduating people who are prepared to do this job, and the rest of us will be making a lot of noise to open up the doors for those jobs to be available. I think a second major challenge going forward is to offer innovative, distinctive, and flexible academic career progression. For promising technical workers who view their work as a career worth investing in, and all other comers. And it's been thrilling for me to see the diversity of students and the backgrounds that they're bringing to this work. I think this enriches the field mightily. And I think that the more the college opens its doors to that kind of innovative, flexible academic career progression, the better, because there are a lot of people who have bits and pieces of it but need it to come together for them. So the jobs in the new era will require new competencies, and it's doubtful that these can be learned through continuing education alone. So part of this challenge that I pose to the college is to think more innovatively about how it supports continuing competency development for all of us who aren't going to get this through a short course or a 2-day seminar. You've got certificate programs now, you've got a lot of academic resources, and I think there are opportunities to open that up in more flexible ways to much broader audiences and make a lot of noise about the availability. New era of continuing education, lifelong learning support for this field, because all of us in the field need new science grounding. This is new work. Number 3, a little controversial perhaps, but I challenge the field to think about offering the first PhD in health information management science. We need it. I know that we'll have some good debates about that, but I think it's very consistent with the CSS legacy. And to grow research in this field and think about it as an information science, we need a PhD level cadre, both for research, to prepare faculty, and really to raise the profile of the field to a par with some of the medical informatics profile. We need to be at that level. And I think the college is well prepared to do that. It's done the doctoral for nursing and for physical therapy. I guess I'm suggesting a little more of a stretch to PhD, but whatever, you'll bat that one around. I think that's important, and I think the time has come, and I think I would frame it as information management science. Continue to serve in leadership roles is my 4th advice for going forward. For AHIMA, engage as a faculty and as a student body with HIMSS, with the American Medical Informatics Association and other industry groups. We need all of these groups to be successful, and we need to make noise and be engaged across the board. It helps the field, it helps the college. Part of this continuing in leadership roles, I implore you to continue to publish the LaTour Eichenwald-Maki textbook. I've had the privilege of writing a chapter for, I think it was edition 1, 2, and now 4. And, you know, I think it's just been a remarkable accomplishment, and not one that they've sat back and said, okay, we're done now. You've updated it 4 times in how many years? Wow. So like anything else, you need to reinforce even the strongest of brands, because it's a fickle public and the competition is growing. And I would really look at how to support the continued advancement of that textbook, which has been really, really important to the field and to the student that Ryan met in Salt Lake City. So that's just the few things that I think the faculty should do in their spare time. But, you know, we'll take on a little of this ourselves. And to all the alumni of this fine college, I challenge us to consider how we can make this special HIM Forum something more than an annual learning event. Can it be that? Plus, can it be used as a way of advancing the leadership vision for the information science era? For all who have had the honor of being on faculty or being students of this fine college, I think it would be great to invite us to think about or engage in some new ways with the college around this forum to share what we're learning. The tragedy of what's happening in this transition is that everybody's making it up one at a time, and we're not sharing the hard lessons learned as effectively as a field as we should. And, you know, there's so much work to do, but if the college positions itself as the focal point for an information science curriculum and then focuses this forum in a way that says we're going to engage all of us together to share what we're learning about how to do this differently in a digital age, I think we'll not only get all the anecdotal evidence that will feed the continued development of the curriculum and the textbooks, but it'll raise the profile of the college, and I think there's no point in thinking any small dreams. We have a wonderful forum here of a great need and an opportunity, I think, to come together. So I challenge us to think about making this forum on innovation, leadership and innovation, as a locus for a robust learning community and a nexus of this new era for health information management. An era that really needs the Benedictine values of the college and the legacy of leadership of Kathy and Shirley, who have contributed so much to the profession and the college over the course of their careers. Well, today at HIIM at CSS, we're not only recounting history, we're making it. And I thank you and congratulate everybody for allowing me to be part of this. Thank you. I think we're right on time. I don't know if, Brian.